Hello, I hope you're having a lovely day today. Today's video is going to be a little bit more chill and relaxed. My old school style of homemaker chats where I'm just sharing with you things that I've been learning, what I've been enjoying, and basically everything that I'm sharing about today has to do with meals and being in the kitchen, and that has been my sort of creative homemaking, is trying different meals and such. So I thought I would share with you my new ways of being inspired for meals, because I think it's easy to get stuck in a rut where you're making the same thing week after week and you just want to be inspired for new and fresh ideas. And a lot of times that's where I'll go and I'll look through my cookbooks, and that's usually very helpful. But recently I have two new ways of being inspired for meals, and so I thought I would share both of those with you. So the one way kind of starts off by what we've been reading. I shared in one of my other homemaker thrift haul videos that we have recently started reading the Lord of the Rings series, and I have never read Lord of the Rings. I've seen the movie once, but that was back in 2016, actually the day before I met Scott. I was in South Africa with some of the other interns that I was at the mission with, and they wanted to spend the entire Sunday watching the Lord of the Rings series. So I was there, but I wasn't really engaged. So I don't really count myself as seeing it because I had no idea what was going on, and I also had no interest at the time. And I really still had no interest until recently. He's seen the movies, because when we go to South Africa, it's around a 15.5 to 16-hour flight, and the last time we went, he watched all three of the Lord of the Rings movies, the extended edition type, but he had never read the books before. So we actually started the books on the Libby app. It's the library app that you can download for free. As long as you have a library card, you can access it, and there's audiobooks on there, which we really like. And one of the audiobooks was read by this British guy. I don't even know who it was. It happened to be available, so we downloaded it, and we did not get through it in the 2 weeks that it was available. There was already a wait list, a massive wait list, so we were put at the very bottom of it. And we were like, should we wait? Who knows how long it'll be? We looked up buying the books online, and then we were like, we'll just trust the Lord and see if He provides them for us. And I came across an online auction with a whole bunch of old vintage books and bid on it and ended up getting it. All three of the Lord of the Rings series books were in it, plus The Hobbit. So it was so cool because now we have the whole series, and we are now almost through the second book. So anytime we're in the car, I'll read it, and then in the mornings we try to read a little bit of it after we do our Bible time, just because we enjoy it so much. And then sometimes we'll read it at night if we're feeling up to it. But it's been so fun. I think it really helped starting with the audiobooks, because I was really intimidated by the language because all of the words were so bizarre. So I think starting with the audiobooks and hearing how things were pronounced was really helpful for me, and me then reading it myself. But all of this does come back to my thing about meal planning. It may seem like I went off on a rabbit trail, but it all ties together. So our church has a get-together every year, and it's a Hobbit feast, and so we were planning on going to it, and that was one of the reasons also why we wanted to start reading the books, was because we were like, if we're going to go to this, I actually want to know what's going on. And so we were planning on going, so I was looking up recipes of like what type of food to take to this Hobbit feast. In the midst of looking up recipes, I did not realize how many recipes were on the internet around Lord of the Rings, or how many recipe inspiration ideas are out there based off of movies or TV shows or books. So after looking up all types of different Hobbit meal inspiration, I decided on these pork pot pies, and they are amazing. I will link the recipe below, and I did use fresh milled wheat berries, and I used white wheat berries, and I kept all the measurements the same. I just ground it as fine as I possibly could. I've made this recipe 3 times now. I made it twice before the Hobbit feast, which we actually didn't end up going to it, but that's a different story. But I made it twice beforehand to make sure I knew what I was doing, that the fresh milled flour would work with it. The third time actually that I was planning on making it for the event, I didn't grind the wheat berries enough, and it definitely affected the pastry. So that is a huge thing. If you're going to grind the wheat berries yourself and you want to follow this recipe, make sure you do it super fine, or you then sift out all of the bran. I made the recipe again the next day for the event, and I made sure it was fine. I even sifted out in my bigger mesh sifter. It turned out amazing. But I ended up having a really bad headache that day, and I never get headaches, so it was very bizarre. And we had to wake up super early the next morning, so we had to go out of town, and I decided that, you know what, I really need rest. And so we didn't end up even going to the Hobbit feast, but the inspiration was there that you can make meals based off of the books that you're reading, especially if you're reading books for your children. So I will share the link to those pork pot pies below, and that same website, if you go to the homepage, there's an index, and that website is basically recipes based off of movies and TV shows, and because there's the movies, The Lord of the Rings, that's what it was inspired by. So there's tons of options there. But then another book that I've read recently is the Anne of Green Gables book. Again, so many of you all recommended that I read Anne of Green Gables. I found this at a antique mall type of place. I think it was $8 and flew through it. It was so good. I've talked about this before, but there is an official anneofgreengables.com website, and it also has tons of recipes on it, of recipes that are inspired by the book. And they look amazing. They're very simple. It's whole foods, which I always love. So I've never thought about that before, is to get meal inspiration based off of the books that you're reading. So I thought that was so much fun, especially if you have kids, to like tie things in and have all of your components of your meal based off of the book you're reading. Or if you do a homeschool co-op, how cool of a thing would that be to have a lunch where everyone brings something based off of the book? I just thought that was really cool. Another way that I've been inspired with changing up our meals and getting inspiration is based off of our family history and our heritage, where we come from, and finding recipes that are from that family line. So I have a lot of different European blood in me. One of them specifically is German, and so earlier this year I wanted to learn how to make Geta, because that is definitely a German food. I actually shared a day in the life video where I was making the Geta, and it looks disgusting in that video. Someone commented on that video and said it looks like jail food, and when I was watching it I was like, you're right, it really does look like jail food. It looks really bad, but when you pour it into the bread loaf pans and then you freeze it and then cut it into slices and then cook it on the cast iron, it cooks up so crispy and delicious. It is so good. So I've learned how to do that this year. And then Scott is from South Africa, so I've been trying to explore South African dishes, which, because I've been to South Africa, Scott's family's there, they've cooked meals for us. We've had many people have us over for dinner, and they have made delicious meals. I have experience with the food that he grew up with, but now I'm trying to learn how to do it myself. So they do garage pies, which is kind of like the pot pie, the pork pot pie that I made for the Hobbit feast. It's similar to that, but the garage pies have more like a flaky pastry. And then I've also been trying to make more desserts that are South African inspired, because the desserts in South Africa are just so amazing. They have this thing called a milk tart, and it's basically a sweet short crust pastry with a custard in it with cinnamon sprinkled on top. My mouth's watering just thinking about it. It is so good. And actually, I have a custard recipe, because custard is also very common in South Africa. I'm actually going to pull it out and hold it up on the screen, and you can screenshot it, because it is so simple. It's so easy. It's like vanilla pudding, but they call it custard, and it is Scott's favorite thing. It is so good and such an easy, simple dessert, and also nutritious because of what's in it. Now that I pull it out, it's kind of long, the instructions, so I'll probably just make a blog post on it and put it there, and I'll put that link below. But it is the most delicious vanilla pudding or custard. It's so good. So that's something else you can explore looking into, is what is your family history? Where does your family originate from? What are recipes that are specific to that culture that you can start making, and make it fun. Again, if you have kids, bring your kids into it, and then it can be a cool lesson on your family history and where your family comes from. The whole thing of we're not just people that are not tied to anything, but we're tied to a family line, and remembering our heritage and our past and our ancestors and where we come from and what's made us, and doing that also with your line and your husband's line. It could be really cool and give you brand new ideas of things that you can make in your kitchen. Like the geta is such an easy, big bulk food item. It makes 2 bread loaves, then you slice it up, and then I freeze it in between parchment paper, and then I put it into a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer, and anytime I want it in the morning, I just take it out and put it directly on the cast iron skillet, and we have geta for breakfast, and it's delicious. So start exploring those things and see if you get meal inspiration from your family history. Speaking of the South Africa thing, so I've been meaning to share about this. If you like cooking shows like Great British Baking Show or those type of things, it's quite unfortunate because those shows, if you ever see episodes on YouTube, sometimes people put them up, and I don't think they're ever up very long because normally they get taken down, but if you see them on there, it's normally not for little ears because you have people from all different types of ways of life on there. Just the language isn't always great, but there is a South African baking show. It's called Tastemaster SA, and they have a YouTube channel, and all of their episodes are on the YouTube channel, so it's completely free to watch. It's so clean, it's so family friendly. It is South African style production. It's not as good of quality as you're gonna get from like the Great British Baking Show, but it's, to me, more wholesome than the Great British Baking Show, and you just kind of have to hold space for the South Africa ways of production. Like sometimes the mic sounds weird or muffled, and there are definitely there's a lot of South African isms in there. It's kind of chaotic, it's kind of messy. Scott gets a great laugh out of it when I'm watching it because he can usually hear it in the background, and he just shakes his head because it is I say it's very Africa, but I love it. It's so enjoyable. I will say they have like a lot of people, because South Africa consists of a lot of different cultures, so there's lots of cultures represented in it, so the language might be harder to understand, but they put the caption below to translate it if that's an issue. But if that's your type of thing and you like watching those type of things, I'll share their channel below because I think it's so enjoyable. Lastly, for this video, I'm going to share with you my go-to easy, healthy, nutritious meal that if I am stumped and I don't know what to make, this is always my go-to meal because I always have everything on hand for it. It is potatoes, so you can use sweet potatoes or regular potatoes. Cut them up, put them in, you could put them in a glass dish, you could put them on a cookie sheet with parchment paper, or you could put it in your cast iron with butter or olive oil or coconut oil, whatever you want to choose, lard, and then you put it in the oven on 400. Cook it till they're nice and crispy with salt, pepper, whatever seasoning you want to add, garlic, onion. And then what I'll usually do, depending on what I have available, so sometimes, like tonight, we grilled out on the grill the other day, and whenever we grill out, we usually over grill, so we grill a lot of steaks, that way we have leftovers. So we have leftover steaks, so I'm just cutting up those steak pieces, and then I will, once the potatoes are mostly cooked, I will add the already cooked steak on top, and then whatever vegetable I want. Sometimes it'll be onion, sometimes it'll be frozen broccoli, basically whatever I have. That's what's great about this. It's very flexible. If I do not have a meat that's already cooked and ready to go in the fridge, I will usually just take out hamburger or sausage from the deep freezer and I will cook it in the Dutch oven while the potatoes are cooking, and then I'll just throw that on top of the potatoes once both are cooked. And then you can add cheese on top if you want, or you can not add cheese, and then we usually eat it with ketchup. Sometimes we'll add my homemade fermented hot sauce on top. I sometimes add nutritional yeast. It kind of just depends on the day, but it's Scott's favorite meal that I make, and it is so simple, so easy, nutritious. You can feel good about cooking your family a healthy meal if you're in a hurry and you just need to do something quick and mindless. This is my mindless go-to meal. So I hope you've been inspired and had a new excitement for exploring different meal options that you could make for you and your family, because I do know, I understand when you're like stuck, you want to make different meals but you're like, I don't even know where to look, I don't even know what to look up because I just keep making the same thing. I understand those phases. I hope that this has been inspiring. I bless you and I bless the rest of your day.